You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Hristodoulou, and today we are just one day away. Yes, kickoff for Season 2 of the USFL is tomorrow. We have 2 games on tap, and that is what I'll be covering in today's video. I'll do these first 2 games today, and then I will give a game prediction for the other 2 games tomorrow. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out. I want you to make sure you catch the game picks for tomorrow as well. So we're here. We've made it. I've got to say, it's been a long road to get here. A 10-week season, it feels really short for football, and it feels like it has been, and it has been, but it has just been a long time since we've had USFL action, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm ready for things to roll. There's been a lot of news the last few days regarding apparel sponsorships, how trading card sponsorships. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming out for USFL Season 2, and I cannot be more excited. However, I do have one question for you all before we jump right in and start doing our picks here. And that question is this, because it's something that is kind of weighed on my mind a little bit when I think of last season, is do you think we will see more parity in the league this year? The reason I ask that is because last year it felt like, for the most part, 3 teams were knocked out fairly early, with the Gamblers, the Panthers, and on top of that, you also had the Maulers, who just could not really find their footing, did not win very many games last year. So do you think things get a little bit more competitive, and does the playoff race to Season 2's championship end up being a little bit tighter than last year? I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. For me personally, I think with the amount of changes that we saw in terms of coaching and players moving on or coming back or new additions to some rosters, a team like the Maulers has a real opportunity to flip the script and potentially be a playoff contender this year. So I do think we're going to see a little bit of a tighter race this year, and I'm really hoping we do so. But with that behind us, let's dive right in and preview the kickoff game for Season 2 of the USFL. This is tomorrow, Saturday the 15th at 4:30 p.m. at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium in Memphis. We have the Philadelphia Stars welcoming the Memphis Showboats to the league, or I should say welcome back to the league, as the Memphis Showboats were a team in the previous iteration of the USFL as well. This is a contest where I'm very curious to see just how much the Showboats changed from last year's Tampa Bay Bandits team. For those of you that don't know, the Bandits essentially rebranded into the Showboats here. Todd Haley is the head coach of the team. He was leading the way for the Tampa Bay Bandits last season. So I'll be very curious to see how different, I guess, this team is, because the Tampa Bay Bandits last year leaned very heavily into big-name NCAA players, and on top of that, just players overall that came from really big schools. That was kind of the point of emphasis with their roster construction, and that still kind of holds true today as well. But I'll be curious to see just how different this team looks, because to be completely frank about it, the Bandits did not look great last year. I felt like in a lot of games, especially because you're playing in Birmingham in those high-heat games, that team felt like it was more gas than anybody else week in and week out early on. Like, you get through the first quarter or 2, and the Tampa Bay Bandits felt like they were sucking wind the entire second half, while other teams were kind of racing circles around them. That's probably my biggest concern for them this year, is just how is their overall conditioning? How is this team athletically? Because that was another thing that you really saw, especially when the Bandits went up against the New Orleans Breakers last year. It felt like they were so athletically outmatched. It didn't really matter how experienced that this team was. It was more so just they were not up to snuff to go up against some of these other teams. So I'll be really looking into that, and I'll also be keeping a very close eye on how Brady White, the quarterback for the Memphis Showboats, does in this game here. He was the backup for Jordan Te'amu last year, and now he gets the nod to be quarterback number 1. So I'll be very interested in seeing how he does, considering he does have an entire year of experience now under Todd Haley's coaching. As for the Stars, like I said, the champions of the North, welcoming the Memphis Showboats back into the USFL. Case Cookus is getting the nod as quarterback 1 from the jump this time around. Remember, he was the backup to Brian Scott last season before he went down with an injury, and then that was the last we saw of Brian Scott for the Philadelphia Stars. It ended up being the Case Cookus show all the way up to the USFL Championship, where he ultimately broke his ankle and had to be pulled out during the game. So this will be one where Case Cookus now, who's pretty much led this team already for a season under his belt, back in the same system. I expect him to look really good. A lot of his weapons are back. You have Colburn, the running back. Their tight end, Bug Howard, is back. You have a lot of consistency in terms of just the offense staying together through this past offseason and into the second year. And I'll be very excited to see just how explosive this offense could be, because it really felt like in the back half of last year, they really figured out their identity. Their dual running back threat that they had last year, coupled with just how good Case Cookus was unbelievable. And it really just boiled down to them losing in the championship game because the Stallions just had this much more in terms of talent. So I'll be excited to see how this team looks offensively going into this next year, because I really expect it to catch its stride early, as opposed to maybe taking like the first half or so of the season, first third of the season, to really catch fire and get going here. I'll also be keeping an eye on number 8, the cornerback Channing Striblin. He was an absolute menace for the Philadelphia Stars last season with a league-leading 7 interceptions. I'm excited that he's back. He, again, coming in with another year under his belt now within that system they have over there on the defensive side. I expect him to have another strong season there and be the lead cornerback 1 for the team. Really looking forward to seeing how the Star team goes, because I really have a feeling that they could run it back with so much consistency in all the right places and not a ton of turnover for this team compared to some of the others. The Stars feel like they're in a really good position to potentially make another run for the North title. As for who I think is going to come out victorious in this game, this one was hard to kind of come up with an answer, because you have kind of an unknown with the Showboats and a lot of changing going on over there, but then you have essentially a tried and true system that found success last year, running it back again with a lot of the same guys. And I really feel like the Stars can get this one done, and I'm going to go ahead and give them the W. I expect them to win this game something along the lines of, say, we'll say maybe a 23-17 type game. If I remember anything from last year, it was that these teams started out a little bit slow, and this is everybody for the most part, minus like the Generals and the Stallions who got things going that first game last year. I definitely expect offenses to maybe take just a little bit to get going. It felt like the defenses were a little bit ahead of the offenses last year, and maybe that changes because, again, the teams have already kind of been settled in. They played together for a year, and while it's not necessarily the same exact team for each and every single group, you have a lot of guys returning, but I do think offenses might get like a week or two where they're a little bit lagged behind before they catch back up. You just have a lot more moving parts going on, whereas like you're trying to formulate what you want to do on offense, where defense is more so just reaction to what's going on in front of you. So I am going to take the Stars. Like I said, 23-17 feels like a good score here for the Showboats. There's just a little too many questions for how this offense is going to look for me, and I was not necessarily thrilled with the way the roster was constructed last year, and there's a decent amount of turnover, so things could look different, but until I get answers from that, I don't know if I can buy in. Now, moving into the second game here, we are now talking a rematch of week number 1, and this is a game that I'm really excited about here from last season. The Generals and the Stallions going head-to-head at Protective Stadium in Birmingham, 7:30 p.m. It feels like prime time on a Saturday night. The Generals looking to avenge their only regular season loss last year. Remember, they took that L in week 1, and then that was it. They ran the table through the North Division for the remainder of the season, as the Birmingham Stallions pretty much did the same in the South. This was a game that a lot of people thought we were going to see again going into the USFL Championship before the Stars ultimately upset the Generals. But DeAndre Johnson is the quarterback 1. That is one thing that I really like about this team going into this year, is they're going to actually stick with a quarterback. It sounds like we're not going to get into that 2 quarterback system that they ran last year with DeAndre Johnson and Luis Perez, which I'm all for. And for me, my biggest question about this team, because I really like the Generals altogether, their pass rush needs to improve this year. That is going to be crucial. They were the worst team when it came to sacking the quarterback last year with only 10 sacks through the whole season. But beyond that, I'm very curious to see how they end up either finding a replacement or just who emerges, who can fill the giant gaping hole you have in the receiving core now that 2022's USFL MVP Cavante Turpin is no longer playing for the Generals. That is a tall task to get done, and it'll be very interesting to see who steps up for this team. But I think if they can find a guy with the way the offense works over there. I think that they rely on their running game. Things will open up in the passing game. A lot of play action is what I expect to see from this offense as well. But it'll be very interesting to see who ends up stepping up in terms of the wide receiver group there, because you're missing two guys that you had that, again, Kavontae Turpin being one of them. You're missing a lot of production from offense last year ultimately, and that's just going to be something that I'm very curious to see how that kind of shakes out. And I'm assuming we're going to get some answers early, because when you look at the Stallions, I mean, they're back. Jamar Smith is there. You have all the big names returning for the most part. You got midseason addition Bo Scarborough back. Obviously, fan favorite Scooby Wright, the Shark, he's back. On top of that, they had the big addition, what was it, like a week ago or so, maybe 2 weeks ago now at this point, Thaddeus Moss, the son of Randy Moss, former NFL tight end and tight end of LSU. He's going to be joining the ranks now over there. If I was to compare the Stallions to anything, and it's comical that they're also from Alabama, they almost feel like the Alabama of the USFL, with just so many big names that they have on their roster and just how good they were last year. I'll be really excited to see just how well Thaddeus Moss does with this unit here. I think that Jamar Smith is going to be very fond of having a pretty large tight end to throw to and a guy who's very athletic as well. On top of that, and since I just kind of mentioned Jamar Smith, the biggest thing I'll be watching for in this game here, I'm not really too concerned about the defense. I expect it to be fairly good compared to how it was last year. I'll be curious to see how some of the new players that are stepping in and replacing some of the guys we lost from the Stallions defense over the offseason kind of work themselves into everything. But as far as Jamar Smith goes, my only real issue with him last year, and he was a playmaker, he was a big part of why they were as successful as they were, but it felt like he was very prone to mistakes, and I want to see some more consistency from Jamar Smith. There was a few games where he just did not look like the answer at quarterback, and it felt like there were times where people were like, are they going to pull him, and is Alex Magoo going to take over? I want to see some more consistency from him, but with how much talent is around him, and like I said, the addition of Thaddeus Moss, I feel really good about Jamar Smith's second year. And again, this is another year for him in this system, so I think that'll help him out as well. But I mean, Jamar Smith looked really good when he was really good, but we can't ignore the fact that he did have a few games where he was like 50% completions, barely pushing 100 yards passing, and he'd have an interception or two that would just leave you scratching your head. So that's probably the biggest thing for me going, not even into just this game, but overall as a whole for the season for the Birmingham Stallions, is just, can Jamar Smith rein in some of those mistakes and become a more consistent quarterback for the team? But beyond that, as for my prediction for this game, who I think is going to come out on top here, it was a bit of a tough decision, because I'm really excited about what the Generals are going to be doing this year, but I have a really hard time picking against the defending champions, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to say I'm taking the Birmingham Stallions on this one here. I think it's going to be another hot contest. I really expect something along those lines. You have two mobile quarterbacks that can throw the football. And on top of that, you have some really good talent on both sides of both the defense and the offense. It's going to be up to the Generals to really bring the heat and show that their pass rush has improved compared to last season. But overall, I think we're going to get ourselves a really good game. And I think it's going to be something similar to what we saw last year. And I'm going to think in the ballpark of something like, I'm going to go 24-20. Maybe not quite as high scoring as that game was initially to start things off last year, but I think we're still going to get a good competitive game here. So 24-20 feels good. Give me the Birmingham Stallions. The defending champions start 1-0. The North Division champions start 1-0 as well. Both teams get their season off to a strong start. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions. Who do you think comes out winners this week? Let me know in the comment section down below. And again, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss tomorrow's picks video as well, where I'll go over the other two games that we have on Sunday. But that's it for me. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.